In this video, we're going to show you how to remove and replace the front flex hose to caliper on either the driver or the passenger side on an 01 V70 Volvo Wagon. 19mm socket to remove the wheel. Take the tire off. So before you do any hydraulic repair, you always want to make sure that the caliper bleeder screw opens up, because that's how you're going to have to bleed the system so you get a good pedal. If that's frozen or broken off, you're going to need to get a new caliper or drill and tap it out. But first thing I'm going to do is take my dust cover off, which is a good sign because that usually means that they're not going to be frozen. All right, good. So we have movement there. That's what I'm looking for. Just going to snug it up. I'm going to put that boot aside. And that's a 10mm wrench on this caliper. Now we're going to follow the flex line over, and it goes over to the steel line here and into the caliper. I'm going to unloosen it just right here snug, and then I'll go up to the line and loosen it up there. This is going to be a 14mm wrench. Make sure you have a catch bucket below. I have a little pan that I'm catching any loose brake fluid. So now we're going to follow the line up and go to the steel line. So the steel side of this line is a 13mm flare nut. I use flare nuts because at least it won't strip the nut and we don't have to create a new line. So we'll put that 13mm on there. I've pre-sprayed it with a couple of penetrating spray, and then the flex line is a 14mm wrench. Now if the ABS line is in your way, you can definitely clearly get that out of the way. Mine has some good movement, so. I think pretty soon I can swap over to a regular wrench here. There's no tension behind that, so let's get into a 13mm wrench. Make it go a little faster. And you will start getting brake fluid out. That's why I've got that catch bucket below me. So now we're going to follow this line right over to the caliper. So here's a little quick tech tip. So we have the steel line here and fluid coming out. I'm going to use the actual cover for my bleeder screw, and I'm just going to put it right over the end here and slow down that brake fluid from coming out of that master. Now that that's all set, you can see it almost stopped it completely. I'm going to take my 14mm wrench and I'm going to break this free from the caliper. I already loosened it. So now we can just take it, spin it right out. Drain it right into that catch basin. Grab our new one, make sure there's no debris or dirt, and hand start that so you don't cross thread it. That's a 14mm wrench also. I'm going to snug this right up. It's got a flare seat on it, so that's why you don't need a copper washer down there. The caliper is bored out and has an actual seat inside, so the line has that bubble flare on the end. Nice and snug. Now we're going to bring it right around. So now we can take that little boot off, and you'll see the brake fluid start dripping out again. And I'm just going to bring it right through that metal bracket where that line meets. I'm hopefully going to be able to start this by hand. So now I'm going to get my 13mm wrench and 14, and I'm going to snug this line up. I'm going to use the open end wrench until we snug it. There we go. Now we're going to get that flare wrench because I don't want to damage that part of the line. So 13mm flare. Give it a good snug. Perfect. Now we'll clean that with some brake clean and bleed the brakes. Cleaning the caliper area also for now. Anything that the brake fluid touched. Then we'll let it dry. Now that the flex hose has been replaced, we're going to come over here to the master cylinder, which is located in the engine compartment in front of the driver's seat. And we're going to take the cap off. Make sure there's no dirt surrounding it. You don't want dirt going into that master cylinder. And we're going to look at the cover and tell us what kind of brake fluid this takes. And right there, it says use only .4. So that's what we're going to get. Have some .4 fluid, and I'm topping this off before I start bleeding it. It's okay if you go a little over full because you're going to be bleeding the brakes. You can see the line on the side here, that's full. So I'll put the cover on, and you can always give it a little shake, and you'll see the fluid line shaking. So now that we've got the cover on, we're going to open that bleeder screw and gravity bleed it. All right, so now we're going to gravity bleed our brake fluid, and I'm going to take that cover back off. And it's a 10mm wrench. We're just going to open this and let gravity do its thing. And I've got my catch basin down below. See those air bubbles? That's what we're looking for it to stop. Once we get a solid stream after a minute or two, I have the hood open. I'll just keep checking that master cylinder. See, more air bubbles. This is what we call gravity bleeding. And we're looking for a steady stream of brake fluid. It could take a minute or two. Once it happens, you should be perfect. Do you see that? That last bubble popped up. Just to make sure there's no other trapped air. Sometimes if there's a bend in the actual line or anything, you can get air trapped in little corners. That's when you'll get a slow down pedal, like a pedal slowly seep down and when you get your foot on the brake. It's usually from trapped air. And instead of doing this job twice, I'm just going to make sure there's no trapped air bubbles. Okay, about 2 minutes has gone by. So now it's time to tighten this up. You want to make sure it's bottomed out. Just give it a good 1/8 of a turn. We'll clean that with some brake clean. Put the boot back on. Put my boot back on. Keeps dirt out for the future. Now we're going to reinstall our tire. And because it's a European style, I always have one of the actual lugs in my hand so I can start it and walk away without the tire falling off. Now it's 19mm. As long as they're started and they won't cross thread, that's all you're looking for. You don't need to tighten them up by hand. We just want to get a couple of turns on them, go on and snug them down. We'll torque these to the factory spec, which is 81 foot-pounds. Always going a cross pattern, crisscross, or star. Now we'll lower it and torque it up. Okay, so like I said, the factory torque spec is 81 foot-pounds, and we're going to go in a crisscross or star pattern. Just double check. And good to go. When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.